Okay, this is a second day reviewing for the test on sections 8.1 to 8.3. So as always, I'm going to have you try questions first and then kind of watch solutions from there. So first question here is going to be a graphing one. So we got to graph this, and to earn the full points on the test, you have to label any holes or asymptotes clearly. So pause the video, give it a shot before watching the solution. All right, so first thing to note is no matter what, you can always just graph on your calculator, right? If you want to get a sense of what it looks like, just type it in the y equals screen, but make sure that you use parentheses when you enter it. All right, to do like holes and at least vertical asymptotes, you start with when is the denominator 0. So if we have x plus 3, when would that be 0? If you subtract 3 from both sides, you'll see that -3. Okay, and you can see that if x was -3, you'd have a 0 on the bottom, you'd be divided by 0, and that'd be a problem, right? So we know at -3, that's either going to be a hole or an asymptote, vertical asymptote. And so to figure out which it is, we have to see if this factor cancels with a factor in the numerator. All right, and so to do that, we have to actually factor the numerator, which this one is square minus square. So if we do +3 and -3, those multiply to -9, 3 and -3, and then add up to 0x in the middle. So this thing expands to those two little binomials. Okay, and once we have that, we can see that the x plus 3's cancel out, those factors cancel out, which means this x minus 3 spot is a hole, right? So there's going to be a hole right there in our graph. No vertical asymptotes, right? Because that's our only discontinuity, our only break is -3, and it's a hole. So no vertical asymptotes. As far as horizontal, we're going to use this chart, which has m and n are the highest exponents, and this chart is given to you on the test, so you don't have to memorize it, but we got to know how to use it. So m would be, up top would be 2. Our highest asymptote up top is 2. Our highest asymptote on the bottom is 1, so it's 2 and 1. So we have m greater than n, and according to the chart, there's no horizontal asymptote. So we have no horizontal asymptote to worry about here in our graph. All right, so all we really got is one hole, and then from here we just got to graph it. Okay, so I'm going to go into y equals and just type it in and make sure I use parentheses. So x little hat thing squared -9 divided by x plus 3. Okay, and I think this one ends up looking linear pretty much, but we just have to know that there's a hole right here. Okay, and even though you can't see it on the graph, if you hit the table, you'll actually see it. If you go to x of 3, it'll give you an error because there's a hole, sorry, x of -3, it'll give you a hole there. Okay, so when I draw it, I'm just going to draw what I see in my calculator and then just draw a hole at -3. Right, so I'm going to draw approximately what I see, and then right here at -3, I'm going to go down to my graph and draw a hole because there's a break, the discontinuity right there in the graph. Okay, so we're going to focus on graphing. 8.1 is about the director inverse equations, what we did in the previous review lesson. This one, we're just going to focus on graphing, right? And a couple things to know. One, you can use your calculator on all of this, right? So to get a sense of it, you can definitely graph on the calculator, but make sure you put in parentheses, right? That's the only thing that's probably going to mess you up is if you don't put parentheses, in when you enter them. And then the other thing is, really, there's two different ways to graph. In 8.2, where the numerator is simple, not an expression, you can just graph for transformations. And then if you have a crazy expression like the second one here, then you have to do kind of all those steps where you find all the discontinuities and use the little chart for the horizontal asymptote, right? And you can actually do that all the time if you want, but on this, it's just going to be a lot easier to shift. Okay, so I'm going to review the two methods here on these two questions. So again, the numerator is simple here. So I'm just going to say that this is our basic shape, our parent, looks like that. And so we're just going to shift that around. So we're going to take that parent, and that's going to be shifted right 2 because of this -2 and up 1. So I'm going to go right 2, up 1. and then draw in my asymptotes through that point. So we have x equal 2 as our vertical one and y equals 1 as our horizontal one. And then I'm just going to draw this shape, and then I'm going to draw it stretched a little bit because of the 5. Because it's a 5 on top instead of a 1, I'm just going to draw it stretched a little bit. Right? And no holes or anything in this one, just draw it like that. And so that's probably the easier way to graph, is just to transform. Okay, but we can't do that on this one because it's got a crazy numerator again. So on the second type, it's actually kind of like the warm-up one, right? With the warm-up one, we had an expression in both the numerator and denominator instead of just a single number like we had on this one, the 5. So we're going to have to do all those steps, starting with when is the denominator 0, which is -2. Okay, and then at that point, x -2, it's either going to be a whole or a vertical asymptote, right? And so we're going to factor the top. The way we're going to figure out which it is we're going to factor the top and see if this x plus 2 cancels out. So for this particular one, it's x and x to give us the x squared, and then it has to multiply to 4, +4, and add up to +4. So it's got to be two positive numbers, and then it could be 1 and 4 or 2 and 2, and in this case, 2 and 2 will work. All right, and all of that is to tell us then that it does cancel. Right, it does cancel, so it means we have a hole here, not a vertical asymptote. Horizontal asymptote, we're going to use our chart again, right there. So m is 2 and n is 1, so it's m greater than n, so we have no horizontal asymptote. We are, again, in this case, actually, no horizontal asymptote. Okay, so you can record that if you want, no horizontal asymptote. On the test, the key is you got to label it clearly, right? As best you can, label it really, really clearly. So from there, I would just type it in my calculator with the parentheses, and I'm not going to do that just to save time, but you'll basically get a shape that looks like this, and then just draw the hole at -2 right there, and that would be the completion of the graph. Okay, so it's going to work on more graphing. I'm going to throw questions at you. I'm going to have you pause the video, try to graph them, do all that stuff, label the holes and asymptotes, right? Show all the work, because I know you can do it on a calculator, but on the test, we're going to look for clearly labeled holes and asymptotes. So pause the video and give this one a shot. All right, so starting with when's the denominator 0, called discontinuities. Where does it break? And so here, if x is -1, it's going to break, right? Because we'd have, let's see, we'd have -3 on the top, I think, over 0, and then that would break the graph. Okay, so that's called a break in -1. And again, we want to figure out whole or vertical asymptote. So I'm going to factor the top quick. So x squared, again, you have x and x. And then from -4, if you use -2 and +2, that'll multiply to -4 and add up to 0 x's in the middle, called square minus square. Since this little factor x plus 1 doesn't have a match, it's going to be a vertical asymptote this time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that in there right away. I'm just going to draw a vertical asymptote right through -1. Except I didn't really draw it all that vertically. I'll try it again here. I'm going to label it x equals -1. And then for the horizontal asymptote, I'm going to use the chart again. So we have m2, that's my highest exponent here, and n1. And since m is greater than n, that's no horizontal asymptote again. We've had that come up a bunch. All right, so then I just have to complete the graph by typing it in the calculator. All right, so I'm going to go into y equals and type it in real quick. Okay, so in there it's typed in with parentheses again. Hit graph, and you can see the vertical asymptote right at -1. So I'm just going to sketch this now on my page. So clearly I have some issues drawing on my tablet here, but you get the idea. If you want the pretty picture, that's what it looks like. But it's got that asymptote, which again is just a line it approaches but never reaches. So just one vertical asymptote here, no horizontal, no holes. Okay. Let's keep practicing. Here's the next one for you to try. Pause the video, give it a shot. All right, so you'll definitely need factoring skills. So on the top, we have x and x, and then multiply to -10 and add to -3. So if it multiplies to a negative, we need one negative, one positive. And for 10, I think 5 and 2 will work as long as the 5 is negative. That should add up to -3. Okay, and then in the bottom, let's see. So it multiplies to a positive, but adds to a negative. So x and x, and then we're going to need two negatives. That'll multiply to positive, but add to a negative. And so for 40, 10 and 4, that seems to be pretty close, but that doesn't work. Maybe 5 and 8. Looks like 5 and 8 will work. That'll add up to -13. Okay, so now if we set the denominator 0, we'll get two breaks at 5 and 8. Okay, so on our graph, I kind of ran out of space, but we're going to have a break at 5 and a break at 8 out here. And then we got to figure out, are they vertical asymptotes or holes? And the way we figure that out is to see if it cancels. So the x minus, that's why we did all the factoring. So we do have matching x minus 5s. So that means that one's going to be a hole, and label it right on my graph. And then for the -8, there is no matching factor. So that one's going to be a vertical asymptote. Okay, so I'm going to draw that right in with my line tool here quick. Oh, look at that. It's awesome. Try that again. Okay, next piece is to do the horizontal asymptote, which I'm going to use my MN chart, where M and N are the highest exponents. So the highest exponent up top is 2, and the highest on the bottom is also 2. So according to the chart, we have M equal to N. So y, the horizontal asymptote is the line y equals a over b, where a and b are the leading coefficients. So they're the coefficients out front. So here they're invisible. They're right here. They're 1 and 1. So our horizontal asymptote is y equals 1 over 1, which is just y equals 1. So I'm going to go to 1 and draw in a horizontal asymptote. All right, we can label it y equals 1. Okay, and then so we got a lot. We've got one vertical, one horizontal, and one hole. And now I'm just going to type it in my calculator to get a picture of what it looks like. So it's kind of a lot to type in. Just, again, make sure you use parentheses. That's the biggest thing. Just surround it all in parentheses, and it should go okay for you. Okay, so I'm going to hit graph. And we can see the asymptote there at 5. Actually, you can actually kind of see the hole. No, the asymptote at 8, and you can see the hole there at 5. And then there's a horizontal asymptote of 1, which you can kind of see on this graph. So now I'm going to take that and sketch that in my picture. It's kind of interesting. That's the first time I've ever seen the hole really show up. So I'm just going to draw this best I can, right? And then I'm going to draw in my hole at 5. Right, so roughly that's what it looks like. Okay, so that's kind of a review of graphing, and just remember there's two types. We did mostly the harder type where you have to do all the different steps, but if it has just a single thing in the numerator, you can just do the transformation. Right? If it has just a number without any expression or any x, just shift it around. Otherwise, you got to do the long steps. All right, so that's kind of the two different types of graphing. I did have one more type of question. Oh yeah, that's all the graphs. So here's just kind of some of the steps broken down. So this would maybe be good, the final thing to practice here, because the test will kind of break down some of those concepts. So pause the video and try this, and that'll be it. Okay, so vertical asymptotes or holes are when the denominator is 0. It's already factored, so we can kind of actually see our 2 points where it's 0 are -3 and 5. Set each little part to 0. And then because that one cancels, this is a hole. And because that x minus 5 has no matching pair, that's a vertical asymptote. So our answer is hole at -3 and vertical asymptote at 5. All right, horizontal asymptote, again, you use the chart. And so we have m of 4 and n of 3. So that means m is greater than n, and there's no horizontal asymptote. And again, that's just that chart, which uses the highest exponents, right? And that chart will be given to you on the test. So that's all the practice I got for you in this review. Thanks for watching.